So I'm looking at several articles, and one of the articles that stood out to me today was the fact that Black Lives Matter, there's a boycott that is about to take place, and people plan to stop spending money in companies that don't support BLM, which is Black Lives Matter. So this is out of the USA Today. And so this is probably a call for a nationwide boycott of businesses that don't support the Black Lives Matter movement. So as Juneteenth approaches, some Americans are commemorating the day by flexing the power of the dollar because, we're in a states and cities and primarily a country that hones in and that is all about capitalism. And I don't know if you ever heard this saying. It says, usually hurting people, physically that's quick, but emotionally it may be slow and painful, but it's even another pain when you defund and you stop spending your money because they depend primarily on the money of poor people, because we are the masses, or the people that are the working poor or middle class, which has we've seen over the years has been dwindling. So as Juneteenth approaches, some Americans are commemorating the day by flexing the power of their dollar. And so this saying, hurt their pockets, or hurt them in the pockets, as they say. So, or get them in the pockets. So on June 19th, advocates of Black Lives Matter plan to support the namesake of civil rights movement by not spending money with companies that aren't aligned with the movement or have remained silent. Some efforts include boycotting celebrities and politicians alike who've been vocal in opposition to the movement. And so they are going full on. So it's not just the businesses, primarily it's politicians and celebrities as well, because they rely heavily on your money to survive. So Juneteenth and Ellison of June 19th commemorates when news of the American emancipation of enslaved people reached the deepest parts of the former Confederacy in Galveston, Texas. So in the midst of protest after the death of George Floyd, whose neck was pinned under a police officer's knee for more than 8 minutes, Juneteenth has garnered much attention as a cross-section of businesses scramble to embrace it this year as a company holiday or time to commemorate. And so I recently saw in Twitter that there are some people that have jumped on board, and Juneteenth is either going to become a holiday. New York, Cuomo has made it a specific holiday, and I believe there are some places that are making it a paid holiday. And so I hadn't read too much into that, but that is something that is in the works and already has started in some states, in some cities. And so one Facebook event titled Boycott for Black Lives will feature a list of public figures and organizations that people can boycott. And so this is the flyer. You'll probably see this floating around very soon if you haven't already. And so on the event Instagram page, it is also posted, and administrators posted businesses it has accused of supporting anti-Black policies. So Boycott for Black Lives, anti-Black list. CVS is one of them that donated in a company name for Trump's re-election. So CVS Corporate and its associated PAC donated $535K in 2017 to political organizations that support Trump. And so they are going for the gusto. They're going for politicians, celebrities, businesses that do not support change. So our overall objective is to encourage companies and people to stop participating in anti-Black behavior. And we're doing this by withholding our money because they primarily rely heavily on consumership from Black patrons. And they're protesting with our pockets. We're protesting with their pockets. So Carmi Basnight, a co-organizer of boycotting for Black Lives, our boycott for Black Lives, told USA Today, our hope is that the companies will acknowledge the strength of Black people's buying power, as well as our collective buying power with our allies as well. And so, although the boycott will be on June the 19th, which is tomorrow actually, Basnight encouraged people to continue the efforts until the targeted companies change their policies or practices. Groups also encourage Americans to buy from Black-owned businesses as well. So to support your Black-owned businesses and companies and people who are for change. So the annual buying power of Black Americans totals $1.3 trillion annually, according to a report by the research firm Nielsen. And so from 2000 to 2018, Black buying power rose to 114% compared with an 89% increase in white buying power, the report has said. And so we're good enough for these individuals to accept our money that we work, these low-paying jobs or these jobs where we're getting discriminated or mistreated, but we're not good enough for change and the support of Black Lives Matter. And so this particular movement is taking it a whole nother step where they're now saying, we support your institutions, we support living here and under the police brutality and the scrutiny that we have experienced over many decades of just being Black. And so you can accept our money, you can accept our being a customer and a patron, but you can't accept us as human beings and as people, and you disrespect us on the daily. And so for that, if you don't change your ways and if you don't change your policies and look at who we are as people and human beings such as yourselves, we will cease spending our money and patronizing your companies and making you rich. So that's basically what the message is entailed. So what will the Black Lives Matter boycott do? Boycotts have a history of surfacing amid civil rights protests. So one of the most well-known efforts is the Montgomery bus boycott in 1956, which is very similar to what is about to happen right now. So after Rosa Parks refused to give up a seat to a white passenger on the city bus, activists and their supporters led protests against the bus system, leading to the U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1956 declaring Montgomery's bus segregation laws were unconstitutional. So the effectiveness varies in terms of how many people get involved and how long it lasts as well. According to Amna Kermani, a professor of marketing at the Robert H. Smith School of Business, University of Maryland. So Kermani said that the boycotts related to Black Lives Matter have the potential to be successful for a number of reasons. So with social media, instant organization, and being able to reach a large number of people, efforts are likely to be much quicker. And Sir Kermani said this, so Facebook groups such as the Boycott the Silent Ones create communities to discuss and vote on the companies users should boycott and hold accountable for their silence regarding the Black Lives Matter movement. The group has 100,000 members already and counting. So it's not just about boycotting, it's voting with our dollars. said Lamar Wilson, administrator of Boycott the Silent Ones, we believe that we can eradicate racism through economics, and that is what this country is primarily about: is capitalism, economics, building wealth, and hoarding money away from those who are now struggling. And when we do make a little money, you want us to give it right back. So if we do not give you any money, and if we stop patronizing, and if we stop buying your products and spending our money at your businesses and making you rich, go to other businesses who support the causes and movements, then maybe you'll see that this is a lot bigger than just anti-sentiment that they have towards Black people in general. And so we can get rid of some of these myths and dispel some of this racism. And what I said in the beginning of this article is get them where it hurts, in the pockets. And so we believe that we can eradicate racism through economics. And so we are expecting companies to not only have diversity programs, but to actually spend their money on Black businesses and support the businesses so that our communities can rise to the occasion. So in saying that, this is one of the plans, if not just but one, of the reckoning. And so I believe that there are more things that are going to take place outside of all of what has happened, because this is not over, not at all. And so there's a lot much more that work needs to be done. Also, I was looking at a senator. He is from South Carolina. His name is Tim Scott. And so I know that I'm adding this in here. He's supposed to be working on a bill that had been unveiled. And this bill bill that they're trying to unveil has to do with no chokeholds. And so it's a Senate GOP that unveils a bill about no chokeholds. And so I'm going to try to go back in there because I'm adding this in there. So but people are not really that jazzed about this senator because the reason why is they feel that he's a token. And so I've heard some say there's been so Senate GOP unveils police reform that seeks to discourage the use of chokeholds, but there has been some conflicts in this bill. So there's two different types: one that the Democrats have put together and one that Tim Scott has put together. And so I don't know if this has like a video attached to it. I'm not really into playing the videos. But Republican U.S. Senator Scott, which his name is Tim Scott, unveils police reforms. Democrat push for a broader changes. And so I kind of looked over the bill, or looked over the parts that they were basically talking about. And so this is by David Morgan. So Washington Reuters, the U.S. Senate Republicans unveil a law enforcement reform bill on Wednesday. This is Wednesday as rival to more sweeping Democratic legislation as the Congress sought to curb racial discrimination in the police abuses 3 weeks after the death of George Floyd. So this bill was crafted by Senator Tim Scott, the chamber's only Black Republican. And so you can see him pictured at the right. He's standing there. He's basically, I saw this where he was pretty much trying to lay out some of his say on how they were going to try to craft this bill by Republican standards. So it says that the bill would use federal grant money to discourage, now listen to the wording, discourage the use of chokeholds and no-knock warrants, and encourage the use of body cameras. It takes a less aggressive approach than rival legislation backed by Democrats in the House of Representatives, which mandates legal and policy changes to rein in police misconduct. And so Floyd's death in Minneapolis on May 25th, after the policeman knelt on his neck for about almost 9 minutes, sparked weeks of widespread protest and fresh calls for reforms. So opinion polls show widespread support for policing reforms. So Scott, who you see, which his name is Tim Scott, he's from South Carolina. He's the only, so far, black Republican that is speaking out, and they have him standing in the forefront, has spoken out about experiences with his own of racial discrimination in the past. At times has criticized President Donald Trump on the issue as well. So at Wednesday's news conference, he said that he had been pulled over by police 7 times in 1 year, an experience shared by many African Americans. I was stopped this year while driving black, Scott said, and so this issue continues, and that is why it's important for us to say we hear you and we're listening to your concerns, which is a noble thing of him, just to reiterate. However, let's get into more of what he's saying. So we're not a racist country. Okay, so we deal with racism because there's racism in the country. Okay, he said. So unlike Democrats' plan, Scott's bill would not allow victims of misconduct to sue police, ban police chokeholds outright, or create new rules to restrict the use of lethal force. And so that is what is the conflict with all of this, and that is why people are not feeling Tim Scott, because they feel like he's putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg, basically. And so you have to go in deeper and you have to mend this thing. You have to nip it in the bud. You have to really get this really from the root cause of what's going on, of the pain and the hurt and the suffering that people have endured. So by just putting merely a Band-Aid on this issue is not going to solve the problem. And so they feel that Tim Scott, and I'm adding this in here, that he is not really saying and doing enough, even though yet he's black himself, he's an American, and he's expressed some of the discrimination that he's experienced. And he too would know what this feels like, but yet he's a Republican, and he's standing in front, and people that are in the background and others that support him in Republican seats, pretty much people on the outside feel that he's more leading the torch because he's more like a token in terms of this situation. And so it says Democrats said that Tim Scott's bill did not go far enough. So I'm getting back into the article, so I gave my tidbit of what the argument is with Tim Scott. And so it gives lip service to the problem. And so there's just no teeth in it. And so literally what he is proposing would not save lives. Senator Kamala Harris, one of the chamber's 2 African-American Democrats, told the reporters. So the House Judiciary Committee approved that the Democratic bill by 24-14 party line vote late on Wednesday, clearing the way for the vote in the full Democratic-controlled chamber, possibly by July the 4th. And so both bills make lynching a federal crime. Believe it or not, they were fighting to get rid of a lynching bill. And so lynching is a federal crime, discourage the use of lethal force, promote the use of body cameras, and seek better policing standards that prioritize methods for de-escalating confrontations with suspects. And so Kamala Harris and Cory Booker were really fighting against this whole lynching thing, to get rid of this bill and to make lynching a federal crime instead. Okay, so to actually implement a bill that makes lynching a federal crime, that is, excuse me. So the Republican-led Senate will debate Tim Scott's bill next week. So Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said that it's unclear whether Democrats in the Senate will oppose the measure or try to change it. So Trump on Tuesday signed an order that would steer federal money to police departments that agree to outside review and limit the chokeholds. And so he was saying basically that they would give grant money to police departments if they would release data on what types of forces were used, if they were necessary at all. And a lot of times those police departments don't have to release the data, and so that's what's been the problem already. And so top Democrats and many civil rights groups said that it was inadequate. And so this reporting was by David Morgan, additional reporting by Richard Cowan, Susan Havey, and Doana Shikul, and editing by Bernadette Baum and Jonathan Otis and Peter Cooley. Okay, so this right here, it just is like sort of like a tidbit of what they've been proposing, what they've been working on. And so there's a Republican bill that's trying to be put in place, and there's a Democrat bills that are similar. They're just going about things in a whole nother fashion. And so they pretty much are not really that jazzed about Tim Scott's approach, although he's been very vocal. Most of the Republicans are very vocal about how they want to approach things. The other thing is I don't know if you saw, there was on the news yesterday someone who, or many others, that have been blaming Obama, saying that he could have Republicans, namely, have blamed Obama, saying that in his presidency of 8 years, he could have made some changes, but actually he had tried to make changes. Many things were blocked. And so that was the argument. And so it's crazy. Anytime people try to bring a president that's no longer active into the conversation to blame him, and he happened to be African American, seems to me that they really don't want to make change. They're just doing this to try to quiet people down because of the rioting and the widespread protests. I don't know if you really paid attention that some of those, they had these curfews that kept going. Our phones were going off like crazy. In the beginning, when there were widespread, like civil unrest, I could understand. But when the civil unrest started to run out of gas, so to speak, and you didn't see very many people out there, taking to the streets as much, they were still doing the curfews, and the phones were going off like crazy. You had to be in at 5, but a lot of that was because they didn't want people to protest. They had peaceful protests that took place thereafter, and so they were trying to figure out how to make people go home and no longer protest and silence people, and so that was a huge problem. And so this is the thing that we're looking at now as well. So it's not only the Black Lives Matter boycotting of the businesses and the politicians, but also this new senator on his issue of chokeholds. Um, and it's not totally in his package or bill, that is, he's not actually banning this. He's like making it incentivizing police departments, saying that if you use less of this force, then you will get grant money, which is not enough. It's like I said, putting a band-aid on a broken leg. But anyway, so Republican U.S. Senator Scott unveils the police reforms Democrat push for broader changes. And so that's basically what that whole thing is. I tried to say it in a way where it was more easy to be comprehended, because a lot of times when they get on the news and they explain all of these things, it's not explained enough that the public can really understand where their place lies. So you could easily think, by looking at him Oh, he's a black man. He must know what this whole thing's about. He knows what discrimination is about. He expressed his experience with law enforcement. So let's vote in his favor. But think about it. He's a Republican. Not to say anything bad about all Republicans, but what I'm saying is people feel that Tim Scott might be actually not the one speaking. He's physically, we see him speaking on the issue, but in the background there may be other people that aren't black that are telling him how to say it and how to deliver it in a way where it's accepted because he happens to be a black mouthpiece for the Republican Party. But anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna let this video go. What are your thoughts on this issue? Because this right here is not over with, because much of what has usually been said is always Mitch McConnell that you see right here. He usually makes all the comments. He makes all the decisions. It seems as though he's the biggest voice of this little cabinet here. But anyway, actually that cabinet, this group is not that little, but they're using Tim Scott that you see right here to make the case as to how they're going to go or approach their bill on this no chokehold thing. But it doesn't mean no chokeholds banned. It we're banning chokeholds altogether. It just means it will incentivize police departments so that they will use less of this force, and that they release their data if they agree to do so. That will incentivize them. And so we'll see how this plays out. And so this is more a developing type of situation. Having said that, I'm going to let this video go. What are your thoughts on this? I don't know that this will make things work, because like when you just make something really narrow, it doesn't help everyone. The other thing that I noticed in one of the women that had approached the podium said that it is widely recognized that black males have a different experience or a set of experiences with law enforcement. I want to add this in here before I go, because I thought this was important. If you look at some of the stories, they need to have people who actually have done their homework on this. You really don't even have to be somebody that's like extremely smart to know that most of the stories that we've been seeing, even if you have like Netflix, Khalif Browder, he was not a full-grown man when he was treated harshly and thrown in a juvenile hall, and then he was beaten constantly. He was beaten by security guards and by other juvenile inmates. They had a racket going on in Rikers, which is now supposedly closed. They had were getting the youth to fight. They had a fight club in there, and they were beating this boy, beating him, and then when he finally was let out and proven that all the charges were dropped, proven innocent, he killed himself. You know, most of the killings that you've been hearing about, all of them weren't old as George Floyd. George Floyd was an adult. He was in his 40s. Khalif Browder, when he ended up getting arrested by police, he was 16, I believe, presumably. He was not a full-grown male. He was black. If you remember the Zimmerman case where Trayvon Martin was killed, he was not in his 40s. He was a teenager. He had candy in his hand. You know, he was coming from a store. He was accosted by someone who claimed to be Neighborhood Watch, and he was murdered. If you look at Tamir Rice, he was just a child. If you say that it's just black males that are adults, then we're still not really making change. The other thing is Sandra Bland. That's a woman. She was an African American woman. Presumably, they say that she was killed by law enforcement. They wanted to rule it out as a suicide. This new situation you have with this young man that he was hanging from the tree in Palmdale, I believe. They say that he was killed by suicide, and so, you know, I'm looking at the article right now, but his half brother got in a gun battle with police or law enforcement, they say, and so that's another death. But they're probably going to investigate that. But we don't know all the details behind that. But there is article on that, and so there was a young man that I'm referring to. I'm talking about him. He was not a full-grown man. I believe he was young. He was his name was Fuller. I don't know his first name, but anyway, when you see all of this, most of them, like Breonna Taylor, I believe is her name. She was shot by police sleeping in her apartment, or she was in her apartment. She was a woman, an African American woman. So when you make these bills, you got to be careful of the wording, because if you just say only black males, then now black women, black children are unprotected, black teenagers are unprotected. And so you should say straight across the board, black people need protection from police brutality. And I just wanted to mention that they need to look at the stories case by case, because everyone that's getting killed by the police, if they're African American, aren't just black males. And so I wanted to add that in there, because right now they are trying to do more investigation on Breonna Taylor. And Breonna Taylor is a most recent situation. If you look at her, this is the young lady right here that is in the news. It says the Breonna Taylor case. What to know about the ER? She was an ER tech. She was killed by police. She was 26 years old, and she worked at 2 area hospitals, Parma told Courier Journal. Taylor had previously worked as a certified EMT and aspired further career in the health field. So this woman was murdered by police as well. And so they want more answers. They tried to cover up her story. Her killers weren't even arrested. They're actually, I believe they're still out. And so when they make this bill, these Republicans, they're not including what they should include: all black people, not just one gender or one group of folks. So they got to be careful on what they're doing, and they got to make it broader. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to let this go, but this is really sad that this is happening, that here in the year of 2020, we're still fighting for justice for African Americans. And so I'm going to let this go. And for our livelihood, to survive, to still stay alive, and to be treated as equal. Thanks for listening.